Welcome back to the Coach Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Trey Belcher. With me, as always, my tag team partner, Corey Smallwood. How's it going, Corey?
What's up?
Fresh off the Perform Better in Chicago. Sorry I couldn't make it. I wanted to terribly, but I had some things going on here that just required me to stay. But we spent some time talking about the summit, and everybody had a great time, and it was always a great show, just like it always is. Perform Better is always on top of their games. Anything you want to throw in there from your thoughts on Chicago?
It was great. I mean, that is, if you are a Fit Pro and you have not been to a Perform Better Summit, you really don't even know what you're missing. Like when new coaches get their certification, I look and go, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And that's when you talk about the Perform Better Summit, from all the presenters that are there and the knowledge that they're showing or providing everybody, it's great. And this one was Nick Winkleman flew in from Ireland. Like, it's just, and they draw the presenters that Chris Poirier has put together, and the whole Perform Better crew. They just do such an amazing job. It is the best way to get educated in fitness. You just can't do it through YouTube. You can't do it through Instagram. Books aren't doing it. That nothing beats the hands-on learning. So terrific event, as they always do.
We've talked about Providence coming up. Looking forward to getting the band back together live and in living color up there. So
yep,
good times are coming.
It's going to be great. And the thing that I reached out to you, Trey, because just even shot you a text from the restaurant bar. Some, the people in the industry are watching, and somebody came up to me and they said, "Man, I've heard your story. I've heard Cosgrove's story. I've heard Martin's story. I've heard Rob and Aaron, and we've heard all these stories. We haven't heard Trey's story." And I was like, how do we get like 20 episodes in and you dodged the bullet? You haven't heard your story yet. So I texted him and said, we're putting them on the calendar. We're going to put you in the hot seat.
Well, it was never my intention to be the focus of this thing. It was.
I know. You're the interviewer, and now we're turning it around on you.
And that's all fine and good, because secretly I love being in the hot seat, and it is always fun to talk about yourself. When we started this, my goal was to make everybody else the star in this thing. And part of that is control on my end. I get to ask all the questions, and I get to do all the edits, and I get to do all of that stuff. So I can dictate certain things when it comes to how things are presented. But this is all about me being able to ask the questions. And we were talking about another friend who just texted me back, Geraldine Cooper Smith, and how when we first met, she said Trey came in the room and he just sat and listened. And that's really what it's all about. You learn far more by listening than you do by speaking. And so I just wanted to ask all these questions to all these people. And it is fun. So I could just sit here and just be under the learning tree of Corey Smallwood, Alan Cosgrove, Martin Rooney, you name it, Anthony Renna, all these people that I've looked up to, and I could just ask them all the questions I want to. And it's totally selfish, but that is so enriching to me. So that's the purpose of why I do these things. But you ask about my story, and everything in my life, I feel like I've done backwards, and I've backed into everything. So even in my education, I have a history degree. I don't have an exercise science degree. I'm working on an exercise science degree right now, but I'm 40 years old, almost 41, and I'm just now getting into that. But I got into the fitness space through my wife. She taught a class at the Y. We were still dating at the time. So because she taught a class at the Y, that means I was the assistant class teacher at 6 a.m. And if anybody knows me, I am not a morning person. I am a night owl through and through, but 6 a.m., you better be there. So because of that, I said, well, if she's going to be teaching this class, if I'm going to be teaching people, then I need to be certified. I need to be legitimate. I need to be able to produce the paperwork that says I'm legit. So 2012, that's when I got my certification. And then that started me on a path. And I was in the CrossFit game for probably the next 3.5 years after that. And then being in Danville, Virginia, and having FMS be in Chatham, which is 15 minutes away, I knew that there was more out there than the CrossFit game. And there's nothing against the CrossFit game. It's great. And for those who love it, amen. God bless you. But I knew for me that there was something more out there. So I got involved with the FMS crew. And Lee Burton, and Lee, when he was on the podcast, we talked about this. He was a professor at Averett University. I was a student at Averett. And so we had that connection, a small connection, because I was a baseball player. And because I was a history major, I didn't take any classes with Lee. So we were around each other, but we were never really close. Fast forward 11 years, this is 2017. And I got hooked up with one of the girls who was the marketing person for FMS, who was a friend we had known each other for a long time. And then she got me in the fold, and I had never met Gray. So the first show that I went to was the Perform Better One Day in Durham, North Carolina. It was April of 2018. And that was a Saturday. And we talked about with Martin. Martin was the first person I ever heard speak at a Perform Better. And it was Martin, Josh Henkin, Mike Boyle, and Gray Cook was a lineup. And at the end of the show, and this was Saturday, so I had met Gray the previous Tuesday, but it was very, very brief. And so Gray came up to me after the fact and was like, "Hey man, I hear you're doing a lot of great things. Good to see you again." And me being a little bit of a swashbuckler. And so when Gray stuck his hand out to shake my hand, we shook hands, and he went to pull away, and I pulled him close to me. And I said, "Look," I said, "I know we just met, but eventually I want this relationship to be so close that when you wake up at 2 a.m. and you got some crazy idea, that you want to call me first and say, 'Man, I got to call Trey about this.'" And did I overstep my bounds there? Yeah, probably did. But
you're getting text messages at 2 a.m. now.
I've got pictures, and I took this picture, and even in the pandemic, and really fast forward and jumping all over the place a little bit, but during the pandemic, when everything was shut down, Gray would come out to the gym. He needed a place to get away. I've got a huge open space, and we can do all sorts of fun stuff, and Gray would come out and hang out, and if he had ideas, some of the sandbag stuff that he had, some of the swing stuff, all sorts of different things, he would come out, man, and you've got one of the best people in the world to come out to your gym and hang out and just spend a couple hours. And I'll get the picture pulled up, and I'll insert it, because I do all the edits. I'll insert it into the podcast.
This is going to be the best podcast, because you get to control everything that you have published. That's right.
Yeah. And so, but I told him then, I apologize if I'm overstepping my bounds, but this is where I want to go. And I think that struck a chord. And we fast forward a little bit down the road, and Gray and I've had this, when Gray was on the podcast, and I'm totally name dropping here, so check out episode 6 with Lee Burton and 12 with Gray Cook. But Gray, Lee, and I went to lunch together, and it was just the three of us. Gray is such an ideas guy, and he's like, "We need to do this, and we need to do this, and we need to do this, and we need to do this, and this, and this, and this." And I'm like, "Man, this is awesome." And Lee's sitting to the side. Lee's the business guy. He's thinking numbers, because you've got to, the wild stallion, you got to keep him in the fence every now and again. And he's like, "I don't know." And I'm like, "Man, it's a total yin and yang. We've got such great things over here, and then it's over here, it's tempered." And you're like, and then he goes right back, "Well, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this." And he's like, "I don't know. I'm going to have to see some numbers on that." And I didn't realize at the time, I didn't realize how this was totally normal. I didn't realize that, Gray has so many ideas, and he's such a brilliant mind, that some of these things aren't totally feasible. Some of these things aren't possible. Some of these things would take a mint and a bank to bankroll these things. But at the end of that meeting, we were walking back to the office, to FMS. And I said, "Look, I just want you to know how much I appreciate these opportunities, how much I appreciate just this meeting, how much I appreciate being able to sit and have lunch with you guys and talk about these things. And I will always treat FMS and the system as it should be, as you would want it treated." And Grace said, "Well, I appreciate you saying that, but if I didn't believe that already, we wouldn't be standing here having this conversation." So that was my introduction into this world. And those guys, I have to say, those guys have been so instrumental for me, for opening so many doors. And I wouldn't be here having these conversations with you right now if not for those two guys. And so we back up a little bit. That's one offshoot. So we back up. Jenna and I started this thing together, and I got into the
even back up. Let the audience. You're a firefighter.
Yes and no. So before
that, okay.
So when Jenna and I got together, we were dating, and she started this class. I was not a firefighter at that point.
Oh,
I
okay.
was selling insurance. I was selling property and casualty insurance. And because when I got out of college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. None. And so my aunt sold insurance. So she was like, hey, well, why don't you just come help me out in the office? And I was like, all right. And so I was 21, 22 years old. I was boxing back then. I was doing all sorts of things. So I sold insurance for 5 years. My aunt got sick not long after that. So that was probably April of '06. And then September '06, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. So she moved up to Richmond. And then I got my insurance license and I was the agent in the office. Did that for 5 years. And then that was never the intent to be an
Long
insurance
term, yeah.
agent. Yeah, I was just figuring it out. And it's been a series of figuring things out. And even till right now, it's still a figuring things out. And that's why I say I'll come at everything backwards, because I learn as I go. And then I may get myself into a situation. I open a gym. Now I got to figure out how to run a gym. But so I leave insurance and I'm doing anything and everything. I'm working at Dick's Sporting Goods, selling shoes. I'm selling shoes at a local store for one of my buddies, Adam Jones. I'm working at the YMCA. So, and this was my entrance into the CrossFit world. So the guy who's a program director at the Y, he leaves to open a gym in this space that I'm in right now, even still. So this was early 2012. And he says, well, why don't you come help me? Because I was going to take his job as the program director at the Y, didn't get the job. So I left and came with him as his first mate at a CrossFit gym. We were not CrossFit affiliated because we didn't want to send them the check to do
Pay the
that.
money.
So it was just a CrossFit like gym. So did that, got certified, got my NOSM certification in August of 2012. That's how I became a trainer. Then in 2013, that's when I got in the fire department, because at my wedding, Jenna and my wedding, which anniversary coming up June 23rd, 13 years, my wife's grandmother was very close with the firefighters because her husband had been sick. She baked cakes for the fire department. So her plus one at our wedding was the fire marshal, who was an assistant softball coach at Averett while I was there. So we had a connection there also. Small town. Danville's a small town, 40,000 people, but it's even tighter than that. It's a really tight community. So Shelby, the fire marshal, says, well, Trey will be a great firefighter. Well, I was still floating around trying to figure out what I was going to do. So I said, okay, why not? I played on sports teams my whole life. So I said, well, I think that's probably like an adult sports team. And so I went into class, and never forget, and I tell this story all the time. So my first entrance into the fire service was a fire science technology associate's program class. I just went to college because that's what I knew. I didn't know the hands-on stuff. So I walked in class one day. And now, if you've been in the South into the volunteer firefighting world, there's a certain uniform that the guys wear. If it's wintertime, it's a plaid flannel shirt. If it's summertime, it's a Pixie Outfitters t-shirt, hat, fish hook, jeans, cut up the side, boots, maybe dirty, maybe not if they're new. And that's not to be too much of a profiler, but that's just how it is. And now here I come walking in with my gym shirt, my gym shorts, and the teacher is a guy named Scott McNeely. And he was a battalion chief of the fire department. He had just retired, but he was fire service up one side and down the other. And so, speak of the devil, look who just walked in.
Oh, Lord.
Boss lady's here.
Hey,
How are you? She can't hear me.
Justin.
Yep, Corey says hello.
Hey, Corey.
This is the beauty part of the podcast, because we can see everybody. Up here's the little princess.
There you
There's
go.
Jillian. Say hello.
Hi.
Now she's going to be IG famous.
Hey, we're going to try to make it that way. She would love it. So as I walk in, so McNeely had these little half glasses. So as I'm walking in this classroom, he's looking straight at me, and I'm thinking, hell, what have I gotten myself into? So he flips his glasses down. He flicks them all at one beat. And I can see him looking a hole right through me like, look at this cat. So I'm 28 at the time. I'm in the class with a bunch of 18-year-old kids. And McNeely, his first class, he's got a PowerPoint. And you got to answer all these questions. You got to get up in front of the class. It's like speaker school, but in the fire service, locally. And so one of the questions at the very bottom, the last question is, what is your philosophy on things? So I'm in there with these 18-year-old kids. And they get up and they don't even know what the word philosophy means.
Right.
Now, at this point, I'm married. I've got a kid. I've been around. I've been through some things. I've dealt with the public. I've got some experience. So I got up and I said, look, I'm here to serve. I don't know anything about anything. Everybody in this room knows more than me, but I'm here to help. And you could see the redness in McNeely's face just sort of wash away. And he's like, okay, this guy's okay. So I got on the fire department October 1st of 2013, did the CrossFit thing, trained kids, did the fire department thing. And then as I got into more adult training, things kept growing here. And for me, I felt like I had more of a direct impact on people in my gym. When you're in the fire service, everybody's dressed the same. So if the fire department comes and helps you, well, who came to help? Well, the fire department did. Well, who was it? What were their names? I don't know. They all the same. They all dressed alike. They're the fire department. And I'm too much of an egomaniac. I can't lie. I like having the direct impact on people's lives. And it really is about helping, but it's like, I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to be me. I've got to be me. And so I can help people directly in the gym. And so
that's what makes the fire department strong. That's what makes the Marines strong. It's not an individual. It's a collective. Right.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Yes.
Correct.
Absolutely. And I don't hope this is never misconstrued as talking bad in any way, shape, or form about the fire department. I love the fire department.
Oh, no. Your stories are terrific about the fire department.
Yeah, well, and especially the Stefan scare stories. And Stefan is a dear friend of mine, and he and I were stationed together for 2 years. And I tell the stories all the time at the Perform Better. And there's nobody like Stefan. And we need to have Stefan on here one time so we can tell these stories and just have it like subscriber only. But the fire department allowed me to grow up. The fire department gave me the time to figure out who I was, and it shaped part of who I was. And when I left the fire department March 1st of 2023, I went in the month before and I told the chief and the assistant chief, I said, look, I want you guys to know, I wanted you to hear it from me. I'm leaving, but I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm not disgruntled. My life is just taking me in a different direction. The gym was growing. My kids were getting older. You know, Jillian's my youngest. She's 9. Charlie's getting ready to turn 12. And I didn't want to miss birthdays. I didn't want to miss games. I didn't want to miss those events. The first day you go into the fire department, they tell you, you're not going to make much money, and you're going to miss birthdays, you're going to miss events, you're going to miss special things, you're going to miss all this because you got a job to do. And I got to the point where I had to make a decision whether I was going to live that life for the next 15 years or I was going to be me and do what was right for me. And so once I told them that, and the chief asked me, he said, let me ask you one question. He said, are you going to another department? And I said, are you crazy? You think I want to go do this somewhere else and start all over and go through another academy and start at the bottom of the ladder? Have you lost your mind? And I told him just like that, because by that point I'd been there for almost 10 years and that's just my personality. And so he was like, you could see it. He just said, it wasn't a repudiation of him. It was just me going in a different direction. And so because I left on good terms, I've still trained the recruits when they have an academy. So I still stay associated with the department. I'll still go over and have lunch with those guys every now and again. I'm still connected, but I don't have to ride a truck. I don't have to be gone at night. I don't have to go up in burning buildings. I don't have to go up in nasty houses. The bad parts I don't have to deal with anymore, but I could be kind of like in the police auxiliary, the ladies auxiliary, where I can bring food, but then when the bell rings, they go and I can clean up the kitchen. So, and so when I left, then it becomes this quest. All right, well, I've been a trainer for X amount of years, but I'm not a businessman. And it's like Alan has said in our podcast, he was a black belt in training and a white belt in business. And I felt like they didn't even give me a belt. And I know we've made that joke before. I just had an open gi because I didn't have a belt. So having this podcast, and I've told this several times, this podcast for me is a way to learn how to be a businessman. And I've asked you questions plenty of times. So when I take notes in here, it's not for editing purposes, it's for learning purposes. And that's why it's so important to me to do this, because I'm learning from people way smarter than me and who've done it longer than me and who have accomplished more than me. So I ask these questions to learn, because I think if I've got the question, somebody else has the question. And I tell this all the time, but it's just a way to showcase others, but also to learn. That's
because you always say that Trey Belcher training started as a hobby, which when I put my consulting hat on, to everybody listening, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend you starting a full-blown brick and mortar business where you're responsible as a hobby, as a side hustle. And there is a learning curve that happens in business. You have to, I mean, I'm sure you've went through some moments as you're, even especially in that first year of I got to figure this out. Like, this is more than a hobby. This is like that's a lot of money that I need to pay in rent, or I now need to buy flooring, or I need to buy equipment, or I need to hire staff. And it's got to take a little bit more attention than just a hobby.
Absolutely. The thing that makes it doable, the thing that made it doable, really, to come at it that way, and that explanation is exactly what I mean by coming at things backwards. And I absolutely have had all those conversations, both internally and externally, whether it's with you or it's with Jenna or it's with, you know, well, mainly just you and Jenna. But that's, that's really, when it comes to the gym, y'all are kind of my inner circle, and everybody else I just ask questions to, and it's like, oh, okay, well,
Try to
that's great.
apply them.
Well, yeah, yeah. So thankfully, because I was in the fire department, I had that salary, so that allowed whatever money I made to be reinvested in the gym. So I was able to build things slowly and not have to go into debt by doing that. And I would say that's the only way that it was possible, even through COVID. Now, we were only shut down for 6 weeks in Virginia. So we were shut down for 6 weeks totally. 2 weeks we were outside only, which thankfully I'm in a 10,000 square foot warehouse. And I'll get into that part of it in just a second of how this was manageable. So I could raise the bay doors. I've got a dock out back. We could do things, and I've got plenty of space. So I didn't have to worry about some of the things that a lot of people did. So the good Lord looks after kids and fools, and I'm way too old to be a kid. So I just got to be in the fool category, and I'm okay with that. But after that, 2 weeks, we were back to normal. And because of our structure, our class sizes are never, well, I mean, they are now more than 10, and we've got several people working here. But at that point, 4, 6 max, I'm good. So because of the fire department, and that's another reason why I'm so thankful for my time in the fire department, it allowed me to get through that without having those stresses. But because of all those things, having the fire department, I was able to do things slowly and not go into debt. I had to replace turf a couple years ago, and I was able to get a grant through the city. They have a program. It's called the Rev Up program, and you take these classes, and then you do your business plan, and you present your pitch deck, and you either get money or you don't. And thankfully, I was able to get a majority of the money to cover the turf. So I was able to write the rest of the check and still not be in any debt. So being more conservative, and I'm pretty conservative financially anyway, being conservative like that allowed me to do all these things. So even though I don't have all the technical knowledge or all the business knowledge or all the stuff ready on the front end, like Dan Kleckner talked about, because I had a second stream and because I was able to do it slowly and grow. Everybody that's been in here, like, I've got Annie's been with me for 7 years, 7.5 years, almost 8 years, and Shannon and Stacy and Estella, all the OGs of Trey Belcher training. We all grew in this together. So they still come up to me now and they're like, man, I can't believe what this has turned into. Mm-hmm. I can't believe how busy things are. I remember when it was just us. And I say, well, yes, and it's awesome, but it's always going to be just us. We always going to be the OGs. And you have to remember and appreciate the people that have helped get you there along the way. But that's me, just figuring it out. And I think that I'm savvy enough to know when I'm over my head to be able to not latch on, but with my personality to make friends and seek out information and seek knowledge from people and be genuine about that. I tell you this all the time. I'm so glad that we do this together. And I couldn't imagine doing it with anybody else. And when you do those things, when you're honest about it and when you're sincere about it, you get a chance to not only do it, but to share the experiences and to share the ideas and to learn these things. So doing this right here is what makes me better. And I don't know if telling the story isn't necessarily making me better today, but it's a celebration of me. Doggone it.
That's right. And that's the thing, I mean, you got into it not as a fit pro. And that's the path that most people take. As I worked at Equinox, or I was a trainer at Lifetime, and then I wanted to do my own gym. And then, then I had a handful of clients. I found a space, whether my clients invested in my gym or whatever it is, they built it. So there's a path that 9 out of 10 gym owner and operators take. Yours was very different. Like you said, almost backwards into it. But I think one of the things that because you went that way and you didn't come through it as an evolution of a coach, you were more willing to ask for guidance when 2 plus 2 didn't equal 4. I find that a lot of coaches who have become now owners or operators, and they go, okay, 2 plus 2 isn't 4. I'll just hit it with this kettlebell until it equals 4. Instead of asking for assistance, going, help me figure this out. I know there's an answer. I just don't have the answer myself. And you've been able to surround yourself with the FMS guys, or going out to dinners or having drinks with some of the presenters, and just, you tell the story of just sitting there on the corner, just happy to be at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how really Trey Belcher training was built, was from your willingness to say, you talked about getting out of the fire department because you have the ego, but setting the ego completely aside and saying, I don't have all the answers. Where can I get those answers?
Absolutely. And another name that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is Josh Hinken. Josh has been super, super instrumental in this. And that was a meeting through Gray also at Chris's house after the Perform Betters. And when I seek out these questions or seek out answers, and I don't have any ego when it comes to that. And I say ego, it's tongue in cheek, and there's a little truth to that, but really it was mostly just I knew I needed to do this. This was the direction that my life needed to go. And to make it sustainable, then yes, all right, now I got to figure this thing out. And that's another thing where I say I come at things backwards. It's a lot of times it's ready, fire, aim. And I'm okay with that because I've got a tremendous support system. And Jenna just poked her head in here, but I couldn't do it without her. And she has been 100% supportive this whole time. I can't say that she hadn't put a foot in my rear a time or 1,000, but that's what you got to have every now and again. When you have the support system, it makes things easy. It gives you the runway to make some mistakes or to be able to figure things out. And that's a huge thing. And Josh, the reason why I mentioned Josh is you don't know where you stand in the fitness world. And I say that each year I go to Perform Better, and that's usually my litmus test. The first year I go, I'm just a face in the room. And the next year, hey, the circle is bigger. And the next year, the circle is bigger. And the next year, the circle is bigger. And I'll run these things as litmus tests and as benchmarks to see not what my standing is in the industry, but just to feel like you're doing the right thing. You keep showing up, your circle is going to grow. But if you keep showing up and you stay humble and you stay inquisitive and you stay curious, then your circle has to grow because you're going to seek out more knowledge from more people, and you're going to grow that circle. And Josh came to Danville to come to FMS to do some testing. And we were sitting in the fire station. Josh came to the fire station when he got into town, and we just hung out. And he said something to me that just floored me. And he said, man, I've been around a lot of trainers. And he said, dude, you're in the top 10% already. He said, just because you're asking the questions, you're seeking the knowledge, you're surrounding yourself with the right people, you've got the right ideas on how to go about doing things. And I was like, you're serious? And he was like, yeah, dude, I've been doing this for 20 years at the time. And I mean, you could have bought me for $1 at that point, because I would have never guessed that was even in the, I mean, if I was in the top half, I would have been fine. And are those numbers real? Like who knows? I mean, it's just a saying. Was he being nice? Yeah, probably. But Josh is a legit guy, and Josh is a good dude. I don't think he would shoot me. I know that he would not just tell me something just to tell me. It's not the type of guy he is. So those little things, those little moments that keep feeding you and keep building you up and keep helping you grow. And then you say, well, like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to help the next person do. And that's a lot of reason why we're doing the podcast, is just to get the information out there and to help people, to say, hey, you're on the right path. I've been on this path. I was the same guy. I didn't know what I was doing 20 minutes ago. And now I know a little bit more what I'm doing 20 minutes later, but that's still part of the journey and part of the process. But you go on these journeys and you keep working and you keep grinding and you keep figuring it out and you keep surrounding yourself with the right people. You keep asking questions. You keep refining those questions. You keep getting better. And then eventually you get a better idea and you figure it out. Or you have a better idea of what that is supposed to look like.
Or you have a new acquaintance that you can ask those questions to, as well as your network grows and the conversations evolve. You start thinking, wow, I didn't even think of that. Now, how do I apply that to my business? Or how do I apply that to my one client who's struggling, or whatever it might be?
Yeah. Or you call somebody up and say, hey, I've got this problem.
Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen this before?
Yeah. So that's any newer coaches listening to this. That is, I just sat through Bill Parisi's lecture at the Perform Better Summit, and his lecture was entitled "Your Network is Your Net Worth." And so, the more people that you can seek out, the more inquisitive that you can be. Never stop being inquisitive. You never know all the answers. Most people barely scratch the surface when it comes to the answers. Then you have these resources that you can fall back on or can reach out to. So, and that's how you went from full-time firefighter, part-time gym owner, which still cracks me up, but part-time gym owner, to
Yep.
now full-time gym owner, podcaster, all the things, and still growing and developing every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And since January, my net worth has increased exponentially because my network has increased exponentially through
Yep.
this. And it's all about figuring it out. And it's all about just trying something. And it might not work. And I will credit Jenna for that. She was like, you got to do something. Just try it. If it doesn't work, who cares? Like, you're not a failure. And everybody says fail forward, fail big. And it's true, but it's still hard to do it. It's still hard to make that step. But you keep at it, you keep at it, you keep at it. And then before too long, you can be one of the old heads on the circuit. And you look around and you're like, God, how did I get to be the oldest person in the room?
It's just time to retire from this game.
Yeah.
Yep. So although I mean, there's some great minds still out there, and keep a healthy body, keep a healthy mind, and yeah, this is one of those that you can do for a very long time. It can be a very very promising career for many people.
Shoot, yeah. And I look, I'm 40 going on 41, and I still feel like I'm 20, if not 18. You know, you take care of yourself and you take care of other people, and you educate yourself, and you do all the things that you know to do, but you still got to do it. Then you can do it as long as you want to. You talk about Trey Belcher training, and we've had Tom on here, and he says the worst thing you can do is name your gym after you, and I've got a gym named after me. And then Frank Nash will be on here soon, and he was Frank Nash Training Systems, and I'm like, man, I got all these questions for Frank. Like, all right, and we've talked to you about your rebrand, but the taking it from from a name from Frank Nash to Stronger Personal Training, like what's the bridge? How can I bridge that gap? Those questions. And that's how the podcast works, is you get these people on that have done it, and you just ask those questions, and you work through these processes.
And I think people will be able to ask you, also like, okay, well, you started out doing a lot of things that people would say don't do. Don't name the gym after you. What was your first member management software? Didn't have one? Okay. People pay you in an envelope? Great. You don't have the KPIs that Dan Kleckner talked about? You don't have the systems in place that Alan Cosgrove talked about? Okay, you're flying by the seat of your pants. And a lot of people get into the business, and you'll be a wealth of knowledge, just like Josh was to you, and Lee and Gray were to you, and Tom was to you, and all the other mentors that you had. You'll be able to pay that forward to a lot of the younger trainers and business owners, fitness professionals that are listening.
Yeah. And Martin said it when we had Martin on the podcast. He was like, I'm not here because I'm perfect. I'm here because I've made all the mistakes. And we go through those processes on our own time and our own schedule, but I'll have plenty of answers of what not to do. So if anybody's got any questions, if you want to talk in Providence, I'll talk as long as you want. And if you got any questions, shoot us an email, coachesunscriptedpod@gmail.com, or find us on Instagram at Coaches Unscripted Podcast. We'll talk as long as you want and as much as you want about anything that you want.
It's good, man. That was good. And I learned. I didn't know that you were doing that insurance for the fire department. So even as long as we've known each other, that's the best part about these what we do here on the podcast is to learn the little things.
Yeah, last story. I'm gonna tell you a good one, and then I'll let you go. I know you got to get going. I've got kids camp here starting in a couple minutes, but so. At the first insurance agency I was at, the one that my aunt worked at. So about 2:00 one afternoon, I got a call from another friend of mine who I had done some work for. And he said, hey, man, I just want you to know that your boss is in jail right now for intent to distribute cocaine. And I said, oh, okay. Well, so True story. My boss got busted for running drugs across state lines, and I found out from that guy. And then my boss called me about 30 minutes later after he got bailed out of jail. And so, like 3 weeks later, he lost his license and had to sell the insurance business. So I got sold with the business to another guy. So I worked at another insurance agency, Riverside Insurance, for another 2.5 years. That's when I ended up leaving and going off to, not, I wouldn't say greener pastures. That's when I just left and went back to school. And I was going to get my exercise science master's. I got sidetracked for 10 years in the fire service. And here we are working on my applied physiology and kinesiology master's right now.
Sometimes life will throw you some experiences that will help you determine the next steps of your life.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you don't know which way you should go, just keep on living, because you're going to find out soon enough.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Corey, this was fun talking about me. Of course it was going to be fun, but I'm glad there's at least one person out there that was curious about my story. And if you want to know anything else, just reach out, find us on Instagram, and I'll be glad to tell you as many goofy stories, because there's a whole lot more. We got about another 6 hours that we could fill if we wanted to. So
just go out to Applebee's with a glass of wine, and we'll hear all kinds of.
Yep, and just make sure if you want a couple extra bottles of wine, you order them before they close.
That's no matter, they won't take bribes. They won't take. They are.
Can you just leave them out by the dumpsters? We'll pick them up for you. We will pick them up. Don't worry.
Too much, man. Too much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us on the Coaches Unscripted podcast. We hope today's stories have inspired and empowered you, especially today's stories, since they're my stories. But please connect with us on Instagram at Coaches Unscripted Podcast. Give us a like, follow, comment, share to continue the conversation and stay updated on future episodes. Follow Corey Smallwood at Corey.Smallwood. Follow me at Trey Belcher Training. Connect with us whenever you want. We love the conversations. We love doing this. It's the most fun thing. And I'm thankful for Corey for being my tag team partner. We always joke about being tag team partners here, because that's what I asked ChatGPT one time. I said, what's our tag team name? And they said, you're the Iron Curtain.
Can't we be like Hawk and Animal from back in the day?
Well, sure we can. We can be whatever we want to be. It's our show.
That's right. True. Come in with face paint next time.
Yep, you're going to come back and I'm going to shave 2 strips right there with shoulder pads. We'll do the whole bit.
With spikes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for joining us. For Corey Smallwood, I'm Trey Belcher. Keep coaching from the heart and building strong communities.